Alright, so let's go ahead and build out our user interface just a little bit more. One quick note, I made a change since the last video. Really what I did is I took the image and I gave it an appropriate height so that it would make sure it fit on my screen. It's not ideal, but I did have one image that was causing me some problems there, so that next button was kind of disappearing. So we're going to add a couple elements to our UI, some that we have never actually seen up until this point in time. So the first is we're going to enter a text box down here in our horizontal arrangement, and then the second thing we want to add is another button. So we'll go through these one at a time. The text box is really a place where when the user taps on that text box, their keyboard comes up allowing them to enter text. In this case, it's going to be an answer. So we'll go ahead and call this an answer text box. And then what I would like is for the button here to be the button that kind of locks in their answer, so that in case there's a typo or something, they can see and make a change. So we'll go ahead and call that our answer button. But before we kind of move too far forward, I want to talk a little more about this text box. Usually, from a user interface design perspective, you want to give the user some sort of hint about what that box is for. It might seem very obvious, but in this case, the hint is what we're looking at. And it kind of displays like some grayed out text, kind of exactly like what you see right now, that gives the user a clue about what that should be. So I'm going to tell it to enter a celebrity name, and that kind of gives them a clue about that. And then the other thing I want to do is change my answer button's text to go ahead and be answer. So we'll just kind of go double check this really quick in our companion app. And if we see that, so here it is running again, this is off my phone, you can kind of see that kind of clue that this box is really intended for entering a celebrity's name. So I would do that here, but you might notice that there's actually kind of a problem here. As I enter Tom Hanks as an answer, I actually can't see the text field, and that's kind of annoying from a user perspective because I don't always know if I've typed it incorrectly or not. So when I do that, I have to get back, and I'm like, oh no, I typed it wrong. So I've got to jump back over, and now I've kind of lost my place. So really, if we want to think about this from a design perspective, it'd probably be better for that answer box to kind of be up near the top, okay, and the image down on the bottom. But I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Right now, if I click answer, it's not really going to do anything because we haven't programmed that. So let's jump back over into the blocks. Alright, so let's go ahead and code the behavior for what happens when we click that answer button. So we'll choose the event when answer is clicked. And before we code, we want to kind of think about what this job is, which is to look up in the answers list the current answer, so this is based on the value of index, and kind of compare what the user has entered in the user answer text box and see if they're the same. And if they're the same, then we'd like to maybe increase their score or display a message or something like that. So you might have noticed that even as I was talking myself through that, I thought about the word if, which suggests to me an if-then statement. And in this case, we're actually going to make an if-then-else. Because if the answer is correct, then we're going to take an action. But if the user is incorrect, then we're going to take a different action. So the way we want to check that is to go ahead and find out the current value of the text box, which we can get from here, of course. So, and I'm actually just going to, I don't want the set. You can actually choose any of these. I just happen to grab the right one. And we want to compare it to find out if it's equal. And there's two different ways you could do it. You could use the compare texts box, or you could just use the equals box. So if the answer text is equal to the current item in the list, so I'm actually just going to copy this block here, and we'll drop that in. What I want is not from the questions list, but instead from the answers list. And I want to use the current value of index. So again, what this does is it takes the value from the text box and finds out if it is equal to the answer list item. So in this case, it would be Tom Hanks. And if it does that, then I'd like to echo out some sort of message, which I didn't actually build into the UI. So back to the UI we go. What I would like to do is to pick another label component and just kind of drop it in underneath here. And we won't give this any text to start with, but the purpose of this label is to confirm some sort of success. So I will call this the success label, or you could call it correct message or something like that. So what we'd like to do is to change the value of that success label, and we'll go ahead and set its text to an answer. You can do whatever you want here, but I'll just use a pretty simple correct. And if it's not correct, then we'll say, sorry, you're incorrect. All right, so let's see if this is working by jumping over and testing out our app. So we've got Tom Hanks here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that for this first time around, I spell it exactly correctly. And that looks pretty good. And in fact, the capitalized letters are all great, so cool. So I'll answer that, and it's going to go ahead and echo out that I'm correct, which is fantastic. But what would happen if I misspelled that? So let's say I instead spelled it Hanks with a lowercase h. And there's also an additional space on the end. So I'll go ahead and hit answer, and it tells me that I'm incorrect, even though I actually know the right name. So there's kind of a problem here, which is that the user has to enter it exactly like we have put in our answer. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes, most of the time users don't know how to spell, or they don't pay attention to capitalization rules, that kind of thing. So we've got to program in some functionality that has a little bit of grace. And the main way that we want to accomplish that is to not be so harsh about the capitalization. And one of the things that you can do in this text block or text drawer is they have this option here called uppercase, and if you choose it, you can also choose downcase. What this does is it's going to take a string of text and turn every single letter into an uppercase character, or if it's downcase, into a lowercase character. So I'm actually going to choose downcase. And what I would like to do is take the value of the user's answer and turn it all into lowercase letters. And then I, of course, want to do exactly the same thing on the other side, even though I know that I wrote the answer correctly. I want to take whatever's in that list and then go ahead and turn it all into lowercase so that I can compare these things exactly together. So going back and seeing if that fixes our little bug, we'll go ahead and keep the same spelling, and I'll hit answer. Oh, and it says I'm still incorrect. So I'm going to take off that additional space that I had at the end of my answer, and once I hit answer, it's correct. So there was something about having that little space at the end that caused a problem. And we will look at how to kind of deal with that a little bit later. But for right now, I think it's safe for us to say that we've got a working app. It's checking answers pretty well. And in fact, if we hit next, then we can go ahead and move on to the next. But then we see another problem. It still has that correct message, and it still has the answer from the previous in that text box, which is just bad design. So let's go ahead and clear that out really quickly. So that happened when we clicked the next button. So what we should really do is, now that we've added that answer text box, let's go ahead and set its text value back to nothing. So that's an empty string. So we'll clear out the user's previous answer, and then we also want to go ahead and clear out that. Actually, I don't know if I can do it that way. We want to clear out that success label's text value as well. So we'll go ahead and copy this as well. So hopefully, now that we have an answer in there, and I'll jump back over here. So we've got Tom Hanks in there, answer it, nope, you're incorrect, but if we skip on, it will clear it out and it'll default us back to that enter the celebrity's name. Alright, so it's time for us to fix that last little bug in our app, which is those trailing spaces at the end of the user's answers that often get inserted when they use kind of the autocorrect feature. So App Inventor has a built-in block for dealing with those and for trimming off those additional spaces, both at the front and the back, and it's this trim block right here. So all you really need to do is go ahead and drop it in right here. And you could actually put it in front of the down case as well, but what this is going to do is it's going to take the value for the text, and it's going to trim off those additional spaces on the front and the back. And once it's done doing that, it's going to go ahead and turn everything into lowercase. And of course, we don't have to do it over here because we've entered that one correctly. So let's go ahead and demo this. We'll hop back over to our emulator, and here we are. And so I actually have an answer already entered for Tom Hanks with an extra space at the end, and now when I hit answer, it will deem that answer as correct because it ignores or trims off that extra space. So we've got a working, functioning app, and we are happy as we check the user's answers. The next step is for us to go one step further and turn our app into a multiple choice app, so that's what's up next.